What if spirit communication isn't rare, but misunderstood? Tonight we're asking the questions most people are afraid to ask. Are signs from the other side real? Can anyone communicate with spirits? And how do you explore this safely without inviting fear or chaos into your life?
Welcome to ParaTruth.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to ParaTruth Reborn. We are live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans, 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast, and the United Public Radio Network. My name is Eric.
And I'm Justin.
And today we are talking to Sterling Moon about her book, Llewellyn's Little Book of Spirit Communication, which is, yep, you're seeing it right there on Justin's screen if you're watching. I got it here too. Now, Sterling Moon is a full-time, heels-on-the-ground tarot reader, psychic medium, folk magician, animal communicator, published author, podcaster, and educator on the mystical and the strange. She's the author of Talking to Spirits, a Modern Medium's Practical Advice for Spirit Communication, which came out in 2023. And of course, Llewellyn's Little Book of Spirit Communication, which came out just this past year in 2025. Which was, of course, published by Llewellyn Books. You guys all know Llewellyn Books. She has several self-published works as well and more formal titles on the way. Sterling has been working with clients and teaching professionally since 2013. She started a school called the Sterling Moon Divination Academy in 2021 and offers classes around the country. Sterling also spent 20 years as a professional advocate for victims and survivors of crime in Wyoming, Minnesota, and Colorado, and she holds a master's degree in advocacy and political leadership. Sterling, welcome to ParaTruth Radio. We're so glad to have you.
Reborn. ParaTruth Reborn.
Yes, ParaTruth Reborn. There you go. We always make that mistake. We forget about that transition we made a year ago.
Well, almost 2 years ago now.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on. I know I've had this in our calendar for quite a while, so I'm always looking forward. But okay, this one's going to be an interesting one. But before we get started, kind of want to just give you the opportunity to kind of tell people beyond what I already shared, just who you are and kind of what you do on a daily basis.
Well, I mean, that's kind of you got the highlights of what I do professionally, but I live in Colorado. I'm a mom. I'm a partner. I don't know. I'm just I'm a professional weirdo. I'm a professional weirdo. And I always say that even if I weren't doing this as a job, which this was never the plan. I mean, I always joke that I thought I was going to be running a nonprofit by now. And this work just kept getting bigger and bigger and kept getting more and more of my heart. But even if there comes a point where it's not my job, I'm still just going to be really passionate about spirit communication and magic and wandering around haunted places with my friends. And oh, thank goodness there's a cat here. Or I'm assuming that was a cat. Either that or we have some really spooky stuff already happening.
I mean, Eric has a lot of spooky stuff in his house too. So
yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm very grateful. I have a little black kitty named Poe. She is a kitten still, and she's an absolute menace, but she tired herself out, and so she's sleeping, which I'm really grateful for. Otherwise, we would have a whole other set of problems over here. but yeah, I don't know. That pretty much covers it.
All right. Well, it's always awesome to have a passion and be able to make a living off of that. That's pretty cool. So congrats on that.
Hey, thank you. It's grateful every day.
Yeah, and you do a lot, more than a lot of people do. So
what I attribute that to is I have a lot of energy. And I will say my parents growing up were silversmiths. They were, hence the name Sterling But so I, watched my parents, they were professional artists. And, you kind of just having that as a model of like watching them do all the things until my dad passed away in 2001. But it definitely kind of like gave me an idea of like, oh, that's what running your own business is like. But also I spent so long like getting up at like 5:30 in the morning to practice magic or practice spirit communication and, or take classes with, teachers from around the world. And by the time I had the privilege of being able to do this as a job, I was like, I don't want to waste any more time. Like, I just want to I want to do all the things. I want to do as much as I can while I can. So,
well, I'm a huge fan of the show Archer. So when Sterling came up and Sterling Archer, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get this woman on.
yeah. So yeah, Sterling Archer was the best character. The best. Mm-hmm.
So what made you want to write this book?
Well, this one I will say was this opportunity was handed to me. Which that's like not the fanciest of explanations, but Llewellyn asked me if I would write the Little Book of Spirit Communication for their wonderful Little Books series. I think there's 20 or 21 books in the series so far. Mm-hmm. And I wrote Talking to Spirits like I love to write. Like this is like being able to be a published author is like my fulfilling a childhood dream. And Talking to Spirits was like that book that I was like, if this is the only one I get to write, I will be happy. And I've heard other published authors say that your first book is kind of like the first pancake. When you're making pancakes, they're kind of like the first one's always a little too buttery and it's always like never quite perfect, but you love it anyway. That's kind of how I feel about Talking to Spirits. And so I was really excited to, I was really excited at the idea of writing a concise introduction to spirit communication until I sat down to write it. 35,000 words is pretty short for a book, and because it literally is a very little book. Right. And it turns out being concise is hard, especially because I wanted it to be something that would be a good fit for somebody if this was the first book on spirit communication they ever picked up on. And I talk about this in there that I often see that there's kind of 4 doors that people come through when they are interested in talking to spirits. And so you have people that they're survivors of grief and loss. They've lost someone and they want to try to talk with them. You have magical folks. You have, I call us natural mediums, where you couldn't avoid the presence of spirits if you tried. And then you have the paranormal folks. And I really do think that all of us can benefit from a good, well-rounded baseline of information. So that was the tactic that I took with Little Book, and I'm pretty happy with it.
Cool. So this book really is for like across the spectrum of beginner, experienced practitioners, and just those who are curious. It's really for anybody, right?
I mean, that's the goal. I mean, one of the things that I really enjoyed was getting into like some of the history, like telling a lot of my favorite stories, getting into some of the lore and some of the terms that we all use, and kind of discovering maybe some of the ways that things have gotten misconstrued or little mixed up over time. Like one of the examples that I gave was like the stone tape theory, which I had always grown up hearing that, that's like the idea that brick or limestone or quartz can really, soak in and amplify energies. Right. And so, but then to find out that it actually was the name of a BBC special in the 70s that came out on Christmas Day. And, just to find out that and to see that this is like something that kind of, it has morphed into something different. And so little stories like that have been kind of fun to bring up too.
Now, for those that don't know, what is spirit communication at its core, beyond of, the fictional movies and TV shows and stories and stuff like that?
I mean, that's kind of like a hard one to put in. It's like such a simple question, and it's also kind of hard to like say succinctly. I mean, it's the idea of first you have to talk about what is a spirit. So first of all, you have to talk about what is a spirit, right? I think most of us, like when I first, started getting curious about these weird experiences I was having, I really started thinking about it was like, for me, it was like guides, like spiritual guides, gods, and ghosts. Like those, I say the three G's were like the only things that I was really interested in. And as I started getting deeper into this, I'm like, wait, it seems like there's all this folklore and these different types of experiences that people are having out in nature. There's also the darker spirits. I mean, not everything is. I'm of the belief that much like much like everyone that is out in the world, most folks are pretty good. Some aren't, and that includes the spirit world. So there are those darker energies. There's also, I think that there's room within this like spirit communication bucket for, cryptids and, incidents of high strangeness and extraterrestrials and things like that, and those types of visitations. And so kind of like, first of all, it's like thinking about what is a spirit. And then really it's just figuring out how to talk to those spirits. And most of the time it's not going to be through our 5 primary senses. It's also going to be involving our psychic senses, which are also sometimes called the clairs.
Mm-hmm. I find it really interesting that you bring in extraterrestrials and the cryptids and things like that too, because we don't typically hear about spirit communication with those particular entities. But I do find it fascinating that more and more people are kind of leaning toward this idea that these entities, sorry for making noise here, my cat's tangled, that some of these entities like extraterrestrials or cryptids could actually be spiritual in nature rather than just physical beings like we've thought for so many decades, right? And I don't know. I actually kind of want to get your opinion on this, actually. So a little rabbit trail here, because there is a strong belief that like cryptids were always physical beings that existed, Bigfoot being a primary one. But it seems
I
like
will apologize. I'm having a little bit of a lag.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. Gonna give it a pause here.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
I could tell that you were on a roll, and I just like all of a sudden, you know what, you were talking about extraterrestrials and suddenly you turned into a robot voice.
Yep.
And I think maybe, so you must have said something that someone didn't really want like me to at least hear. So
well, Eric is a robot, so
so I kind of heard the gist of like thinking of like spirit communication and like talking with like extraterrestrials, but I feel like there was something else like important that I missed in there.
Yeah.
Remember me?
No, yeah, for sure. So there's this. I mean, for decades, people have believed that cryptids, and primarily we'll talk about Bigfoot in this case, is a physical being. But it almost seems like because we have yet to find any true hard evidence, people are starting to shift to this. Well, maybe it's spiritual, or maybe it's extraterrestrial. Do you think that is a legitimate belief or possibility, or do you think that people who have been so strong hung on the physical aspect, because they're not getting it, they have no choice but to be like, oh, well, maybe in that case it's this, even if they don't really believe it themselves?
So I'm going to apologize first to the flesh and blood community out there. Like, I know that probably what I'm going to say is going to really tick you off, but here's the thing. I don't know if I just think it's all really fun. Like, it's so fun to think about the possibilities. And my favorite, so I will also back up and say, so my mom and my stepdad, my stepdad is a hoot. So he worked and he did like financial consulting, and he lived and worked in something like 72 different countries over the course of his career. And one of the things that he was really interested in was the monsters of the world. And so he would, he's in Africa and, learning about Anansi and, the spider god. And, he's getting to be in Nepal and getting to learn about the Yeti. And so anyway, he and my mother end up getting together in like the mid 2000s. And my parents were silversmiths until my dad passed away, but my mom is also a visual artist. So they get together and they start like doing illustrations of all kinds of like monsters. So that's also like another, and as a family, we really love to go to we love to go to haunted places and stuff like that. And so I kind of came up with just, cryptids were always a part of my life for the past 20 years. And my favorite, like just to use just to use Bigfoot as an example, my favorite story or theory with Bigfoot is that they're realm walkers in a very similar way that the Fae are realm walkers, or, Tommy knockers, or which, we have a lot of lore of those in Colorado out in our mines. And so I don't know. I think that's and I also love the theory that what if Bigfoot is like, these are just ghosts of like really, really old beings? Like that's, again, who knows? It's very fun to think about, though. Again, I'm very sorry to your flesh and blood community out there who is possibly seething.
So Tommy Knockers is something more than just a Stephen King book, then.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I would love to tell you about the Tommy. So yeah, out here in Colorado, in our gold and in our gold mines, which, Colorado has a very bloody, hard history. Like a lot of really our country has a pretty
for sure.
We have a very interesting history in this country. And so, the mines, we had the gold rush in the late 1800s, and we had these towns that were like nothing, and then they blew up to tens of thousands of people, and then it was this boom and bust type of thing. But we had a lot of immigrants that came over from Cornwall and from Ireland. And so one of the things that the first incidents that I've heard of Tommy knockers being referenced in the United States were Cornish miners in the Pennsylvania coal mines. And by the time, they start coming out to Colorado, you start hearing about these stories of these beings in the mines. And if you're nice to them, they'll be helpful. There's stories of the miners that they would give like a little bit of their food as an offering. And, stories of getting tipped off when something was wrong in the mines. But if you were a jerk, sometimes the Tommy knockers were not so nice. And, it's kind of that interesting theory too of like, were these spirits that were here that are just similar to maybe what these immigrants from Cornwall were experiencing in their homeland. And, you just bring a familiar name over to like these, to what you're finding in your new country, or do we bring our spirits with us as we travel? That's another fun thing to think about. But yes, much more than a Stephen King novel. And there's also a brewery called Tommy Knockers in one of our towns.
Well, now shifting back to the book.
I will say that wasn't, both of those are in there. So I technically didn't take us off too far.
Well, now we have just in the people that we've talked to, there tends to be a grand number of people who tend to experience signs of the spiritual.
Yeah.
And yet they continue to doubt themselves on what they're seeing or what is actually out there. Why do you think that so many people who experience some of these signs do continue to doubt themselves, despite those signs being so prominent?
Well, especially if it's it sometimes depends on who the sign is coming from. One of the examples I gave in the book was from a friend of mine named Mandy. And Mandy and I worked together for, 12 years. She'll still introduce me to be like, she was my supervisor. And I'm like, no, babe, you were unsupervisable. She is like absolutely unsupervisable. But I knew her kids from the time that they were little, and heartbreakingly, her son Jaden and his best friend Ryan died in a car crash. It'll be 4 years, I think, this coming October. And one of the examples that I put in the book was for Mandy, was coming up with kind of a language of when she, because her those boys are strong, like they are loud, but it took her a really long time to believe, because she went through there's few kinds of grief out there that are deeper than a parent that loses a child. And the thing that she will often experience is a heads up dime. And she started to give it like I'm doubting that you can hear me. I want to find a heads up dime within like a certain time frame. I can't say that there's ever been a time that he's left her hanging. And it's pretty funny because when I asked permission to include that example in the book, within like I think it was like 15 minutes, I found a heads up dime, like, and it, like on the floor of a like hotel lobby, which it was a really strange experience. But so I think sometimes it's just that deep grief and that, worry of like, and also too, people start to worry, like, am I going to turn into that person that sees signs in everything? Because that's a different kind of problem, like not
Yeah.
every song that comes on the radio is maybe a sign from your loved one. I think that signs sometimes, like, from guides or people that work with like deities, sometimes I work with a lot of students who sometimes it feels like a deity or a more divine spirit is trying to, like, get their attention. And that can be also true. So I don't know. I think sometimes it's like that also. It's hard to open yourself up to that life might be more magical and mystical than we want to believe, because it's hard out here. It's hard out here in the day to day. So I don't know. That's a really good question, and I don't have a simple answer.
Yeah.
So we've asked people, a lot of people, about this, and the majority of the time we get the same answer, but I do feel that it has to do with your belief system and whatnot too. But can anybody communicate with spirits, or do you have to be like, as an example, a medium or a psychic?
I'm probably going to tell you something you've heard before. I think there are some of us that we come into this world with those senses dialed up. I also, I do, I've met a lot of other people who do what I do, who also have been through some stuff. It's an interesting thing, like the number of people who have these, it takes a while sometimes before you can think of them as gifts. Sometimes it just seems like as a liability. Oftentimes, we're a crew of people where we've been through some things, and sometimes these gifts are fairly hard won. But what you probably have heard the most is that yes, anyone can train, right? Like it's like going to the gym, and like, you build up strength over time. Anyone can start with psychic development work. And I think everybody should start with psychic development work, because number one, it can be really fun. And also those are the skills that you need to have strong in order to be able to have spirit communication is really nuanced. And so you really do want to be able to like perceive those subtle cues. So I think psychic development is the thing that anyone can start with. And then of course you can always try mediumship. And, for some people it's tougher. It's a tougher road. And for some people it's a lot easier. And and that just seems to be in the same way that some people have just a knack for playing the violin or for athletics. And we all come in with, some level of baseline talent, but that's what I think.
Okay, fair enough. And yeah, that's typically the answer we get. But
Yeah.
a lot of people don't believe in this stuff, so they think that it's a medium or a psychic. They've been training for years, or they were born that way. And I can't do that. I can't go in there, or I don't want to. And that is more of a common one, is I don't want to, I don't want that. And fair enough to a lot of those people.
I don't want to open that door. That
Yeah.
is the thing that I probably hear the most. And it always cracks me up too when like my like some of my tarot students, or people who they read tarot cards, and maybe they have their ancestor altar in their house, and do a little candle magic here and there. But when it comes to talking with spirits, I don't want to open that door. And I always say, I'm like, I hate to tell you, but the doors, you're already doing it.
Yeah.
You're already doing it.
A lot of people believe those tools are nothing more than just that. And in reality is, yes, they are tools, but there's more to it than what you're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you find? So when it comes to your students, do you find that they don't want to open those doors because it's like a burden, or because it's out of fear that they want to try to keep those things closed?
So a lot of people come to me because they had a lot of like spooky experiences when they were younger, or they've had experiences over the course of their life. And it's funny. I have like a few different camps of people that often find me. So I have a lot of students who will come to me that will say, I was really, really open when I was younger. And then usually it's either something happened or it got too much. And so I actively worked to shut it down. And now I feel like there's something missing in my life and I want to try to open that back up. So that's kind of one group of folks. I often have a lot of people who are, getting over some spiritual wounding. I have a lot of people that, grew up in really haunted houses when they were children, but they also lived in a deeply like monotheistically religious home and were told that's not real or it's all like it's demonic, even though you're telling me that you saw grandma and it was really nice. And, so it was a confusing experience. So sometimes people come to kind of like reestablish what they believe spiritually, which I think that's pretty cool to be able to kind of make your own way and kind of figure out what you believe as an adult. I think that's a pretty neat thing. And then sometimes I have people who come to me where they're like, this stuff is happening all the time. And I feel like I can't get any peace and I need boundaries and I need I need to be able to figure out what to do with this. So those are like the three kind of main groups of folks that I get as my students.
Okay. It's always interesting, like to meet different people and see how they react, especially to past circumstances. Because then you have like me and Justin who've experienced some pretty scary things when we were kids. And instead of being afraid, we're like, dive deeper. Let's go find more. Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
We've done or had some scary things as adults too.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd love to hear about it. Like, what's your favorite? Like, what got you guys into this? I mean, is it okay if I ask a question? Because I want to hear about what you guys do too.
Well, I got started, and me and Eric kind of have a similar situation where, I always had a interest in this stuff. I got into Ouija board at a very, I shouldn't say very young age. I was a teenager, tarot cards. And then, I was doing Ouija board sessions with different people in my family. And, we eventually got some really dark answers. So we're like, nope. We're putting that away. We're not doing that anymore. And then later on in life, Eric and I started talking about this stuff regularly. We'd have a beer around the campfire and just start talking about this stuff. And we were watching shows like Supernatural, Ghost Hunters, stuff like that. So we were like, you know what? Maybe we should start a paranormal investigation team. And on top of that, there's got to be somewhere where you could do like an online radio show. We had never heard the word podcast ever at that point in our lives. So we started Night Stalkers Paranormal Society and Night Stalkers Paranormal Radio, and it eventually turned into this. But in the meantime, I opened myself up to psychic and mediumship. And, over the years, I've kind of felt certain family members were that way. They just didn't realize it or didn't talk about it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. I've heard it. Okay. I love it. Love to hear it.
Yeah.
And then on my side, like very similar to Justin, grew up with Ouija board and, playing around mostly, not knowing what a Ouija board really was. But I also grew up in a haunted house. The house that I'm currently living in is a family home. I grew up here. My mom grew up here. So my grandparents owned it. It's 60 years old. And when my mom was growing up here, and I didn't know this until I was already about 16 years old before her and my uncle finally spilled the beans, if you will. Because, growing up, me and my sisters would always witness things. We'd hear footsteps, someone walking up the stairs in the middle of the night, or we'd see shadows, lights flickering, doors being opened and shut by themselves. And my mom was always, no, it's nothing. It's not really, both my parents, there's nothing there. And then when we were 16, it was like a New Year's Eve. And my mom and my uncle were talking. They started talking about ghost encounters in this house when they were children. And like me and my sisters overheard it. Wait, what? And I was like, oh yeah, like everything you've been seeing is the same thing we've seen when we were kids growing up. So I grew up in a notoriously haunted house. And then when we moved out of here in 2004, went to another city, and we had a little haunting there. Me and my family would always see this blue orb floating around the house. We never knew what it was or who it was, but we would all witness it at the same exact time or at different times. And so that was kind of like the introduction to like, this is interesting. But then, right around the time we started the podcast, I delved into a little book known as The Lesser Key of Solomon.
Oh, just that. Just a
Yeah.
little, just a little,
So,
just a little something.
just a little something, a little
Well,
nighttime
and
reading.
you were wanting to be a demonologist at that point too.
I was, but I didn't know what I was getting into. I opened some doors that they just burst wide open, and I fell into 3 months of demonic oppression.
Oh,
It
buddy.
started off with some just typical visions, like just not typical, but
Yeah.
creepy visions as I'm falling asleep. And then that turned into nightmares, then shifted into night terrors. And like, I remember seeing these giant, like 7-foot shadows that would walk around my house midday, and they would just stand in the hall and stare at me, or I'd wake up and they're at the bottom of, the end of my bed. And one night, like I recall so vividly, my parents had a dog she was like a black lab, and they have wood floors, and you would always hear her walking because you could hear the nails clicking on the wood floor. So I was laying in bed, and there's like my door's always shut, and there's a little nightlight on the wall outside of my door in this hallway. And so I hear the clicking on the door on the floor, and I'm like, I lean over to see her shadow pass by, but it stops at my door. And I'm waiting and I'm waiting and waiting. She doesn't pass. And then all of a sudden, there's just this deep guttural growl in my face at the side of my bed. And it was like from there, things just escalated real fast. But yeah, it kind of got me deeper into this whole understanding of the dark side of the paranormal and the spiritual world.
Yeah.
And it took, some overcoming. It took some intervening of the Lord to step in and help me out with some things.
Yeah.
But it opened my eyes. It helped me realize like there are people who've gone through things. I've met so many people since then who've gone through very similar things, who can't explain, who don't understand it, who are still fearful of it. But I've been able to use my story to help them overcome their own,
Yeah.
That's where I kind of step in on this show. It's like I kind of have this whole different, but slightly different viewpoint where it's like I very much believe and have witnessed the good.
Yeah.
But I think unfortunately, some people focus so much on the good that they kind of let their guard down.
The love and light, you can't let love and light just kind of like, make you stupid is the way that I often think about it. And, that's, man, I always like, I think that's one of the things that I do caution people with is that like, I do think that, keeping the more joy you can bring into this type of practice, I do think there is an element of that does keep you safe, because if like the way that I often will go into like a haunted space, like I have a retreat that I will hold for people that have studied mediumship with me for at least 7 weeks. So, we have like a shared foundation of knowledge and kind of like a shared language. That program is called Modern Mediums. But then usually annually so far, I'll rent a haunted space. I'll rent like a haunted hotel or, something like that. Like this past year, we were at the Oliver House in Bisbee, Arizona. The year before that, we were at the Stanley in their lodge. But it's one of those things where I kind of will go into these spaces with I want to make friends, but I also have good boundaries. Like in the same way that if I'm going out with my friends for the night, I'm not going to just be like, telling everybody that I meet where I live. This is like, here's how you find me. Here's like, oh my God, let's keep in touch. And so, there is like, you do have to like have some street smarts and some common sense and also like intervene quickly, because that stuff can get, that's one of the things that if there's probably one bit of pro bono work that I do the most, it's people that they have those types of attachment issues. And the number of people that I've met who are walking around with things that have been going on for 10 years, 15 years. And it just breaks my heart, because it's like, it doesn't have to, there are remedies. So thank you for sharing that. Both of you, I love hearing your stories.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much more, but obviously we have limited time. So, I mean, I've had those different encounters of seeing what I thought was my dad in the doorway, went to give him a hug, vanished. We've told this story multiple times. We had the opportunity to do a investigation at Jeffrey Dahmer's home in Bath, Ohio. It's where he grew up. Had some interesting experiences there, one of which where I was touched. Somebody saw a floating torso, not on our team, another team. So there's been, I mean, tons and tons since we've started this journey.
It's never your life is never boring when this is your hobby or your job, you know, whatever
100%.
it is. Like you will never be bored. That's actually one of the things that I did put in the little book is like you get into this, like you have something to do anywhere you go. So,
Well, and I'll tell you what, it's like Justin and I over the years, so we've been doing this what, like 20 some odd years total.
2006.
Yeah, since 2006, so yeah, 20 years, right?
yeah.
So, but it's like we've at times have walked away. We've shut down the podcast, like we're done. We don't want to do it anymore. And it doesn't take long, a couple months, a year at tops, and then somehow we get dragged right back in. We have a new podcast about it. And it's like every time we walk away, there's something that pulls us back. It's like, let's just stay this time. Let's
The work is not done with you.
all right.
Well, I think the biggest issue though too is when you're doing something like this, especially just a podcast, you're not in the field. The topics start to get stale and stagnant, where it's kind of the same thing over and over again. It's kind of the same answers over and over again. So our ultimate goal with coming back was to try and not let that happen again.
And I mean, the good news is there's a lot of weird stuff and weird people doing cool things. And so I hope you find all of them.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that I get to be one of them. So
Well, we appreciate you. Yeah. So getting back to the stuff in the book, again, probably heard the same thing from everybody, but I'd love to have your take on it. What is like the common or most common mistake people make when trying to communicate, and even more so when they open themselves up?
I think a lot of it is like it starts with you've got to know what you're bringing to the table. So I think that and I see this I'm going to also draw some parallels with like divination. I always joke that tarot was like the gateway. It's like the gateway drug. Like the gateway drug for all the spooky stuff. But I will, and I've been guilty of this too. Like when you sit down to do a tarot reading, when you're hyped up or you're mad, you're upset or you're excited, you often just get reflected back what you're feeling. And then sometimes what you see, it doesn't come to pass. And one of the things that I have found really helpful with divination that I think translates really well to spirit communication is taking stock of what is going on around me, what's going on in my body, what's going on in my mind and in my emotions, and then doing something consciously to release that. So I'm I want to be beige, I want to be neutral canvas.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think that with spirit communication, that gives you the ability to be really, you're going to notice if I really take stock of how my body is feeling, and then I notice that for me, one of my tells is that my head starts buzzing. I get an itchy feeling in the top of my head. And then I notice that my back is hurting or my throat is tight, and I can tell it wasn't like that before. That tells me something. And so I think one of the things that I see most common is folks just not noticing themselves before they start. I also think sometimes not being specific about what you are looking I see so many people that will get together for a seance. I love hosting seances. I think seances are so fun. And also you want to make sure that you have a conversation before you start the seance. If somebody's wanting to talk with a murder victim that they've never met, and somebody else is I want to talk to my grandma, there might be some. So I think sometimes being thoughtful about what you are looking for and what you want to happen, but probably more to your point, the thing that I think is most common is folks will just throw open the doors and then they forget to close them. And it's you just just opening your doors to anyone that's coming in, and then you just walk away and don't bother purposefully shutting things down. Those are probably the things that I see the most.
I still make that mistake. I'm constantly open, and I tend to leave it that way just because I feel like I'm going to miss something if I don't. But I as an example, I've lost a lot of sleep at times where I feel something's trying to communicate with me. I'll get the flashing light, bright light in my eyes, which I've heard is a common one for communication. And it's leave me alone. I'm trying to sleep, and then it all stops. So I just have to kind of set that in rule when I go to bed. Look, if you want to communicate with me in my dreams, that's fine. Let's not do the flashing lights in my eyes so it wakes me up type of thing.
I like to think of it as like it's like I have office hours. There's a root worker. He's this old time conjure man named Professor Charles Porterfield, and he lives down in Denton, Texas.
Okay.
And that man knows so much stuff. And he was like the first person that I like the first like really badass. Sorry if I don't know if I can swear. Really awesome magical practitioner who also would talk about like being sensitive to spirits. And he gave this an example of he puts a chair out by his front door. And he will go and like he'll just kind of, make a point of spirits are welcome to come and rest. Like it's a designated spirit chair. And he once a day he'll go out and check. And like if anyone's sitting there, he'll have a conversation with them. But yeah, I always like to think of it as like a volume control knob that I try to turn it down so I can live my life. But then you want to be able to turn it up pretty easily. But I understand what you're saying for sure.
Let's say like also when it comes to the tarot reading, for example, how important you use the word like neutral, you want to remain beige.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people don't realize how much energy plays into a reading, because I know from personal experience, if I'm in a stressed state, if I'm angry, something like that, I will read something in a negative way rather than in a positive way or the bright way, if you will. And it's interesting how much of a difference it makes when you take the time to meditate prior to doing a reading, or even just to clear your aura or the energy in your space. And so when it comes to that though, like, what are some other ways that maybe someone can ground themselves or create boundaries or intention? Like, is there like one specific way, or do we have multiple ways that we can guide?
Oh my God. I mean, there's so many ways. I'll tell you the ones that are in the book, and and kind of like they're a riff on very closely like what I do for myself, what I teach my students, what I do with my clients. Some people are like deep, slow breath people and like, meditative, they enjoying like those meditative breaths. Other people hate that stuff. Like I have, I have some clients that they're like trying to, calm down and take 4 deep breaths is like anxiety inducing to me. So for those folks, maybe like shaking out your limbs might be a more effective way. But I always like to start with, taking a few breaths, doing a little bit of that body. If you're just doing this on your own, doing that body scan, checking in with like literally what's around you, what's going on within you, checking in with your thoughts, checking in with your emotions. And then, maybe taking 3 big breaths, big whooshing breaths where you're shaking your arms, or big, steady, long breaths. And just imagine that all of that energy is just like dumping out into the ground. Like any excess energy that you don't need is just dumping out into the ground. I really love I'm a big visualizer. I love to imagine that I have roots growing from the lower half of my body down through the soles of my feet. I often like to think that I have like a little tether from the top of my head, bringing, connecting all the way up with the heavens or whatever lies beyond. And then I'll end with a big inhale. And then I envision that I'm held in a bubble of protection and that everything that I need can reach me with ease, but anything else that's unhelpful just bounces away. I also like, if I'm sitting down to do a tarot reading, I am very specific about like who I'm asking for that insight to come from. Cause you could get a tarot reading where you're using it as like a spirit communication tool. Like I want to, talk with my most venerated ancestor, or if I want to talk with my highest spiritual guide, I want advice from my highest spiritual guide, or I want advice from my highest self. But those are some things that you can take to just steady yourself. And I do that with all of my clients before a session. We'll just do a really quick grounding. And that really does help to bring down the energy, even if people come in very heightened. And it always seems to help. Almost always. Yeah, I think it always seems to help. A single time that it made things worse. So
now, again, we've probably heard this quite a bit, but everybody's kind of got something different. What are the most common ways spirits communicate to the living, or is there a common way?
Well, So I'll tell you what is most common for me. I'm a big I get the mental images. It's like a movie playing on the inside of your mind, like you're replaying a movie, or thinking of how like a novel feels when you're reading it. I get clairaudient messages pretty frequently, and so like that's the similar feeling that you get like an earworm, like you get a song stuck in your head. um I will tell you some of the ones you can also, if you are like somebody who you want to like cultivate your psychic senses, and you realize there's some like, we have clairsentience, which is the feelings and the images and the sounds and things like that. But there's also smell and taste, clairgustance and clairalience. I had never had those experiences. And so for a whole year, I would do my own personal spirit communication practice. And I say, send me a message through a smell or a taste. Worst decision ever, because that can just get disgusting. So I always think it's really interesting when I meet people that they're like, I can smell ghosts. And I'm like, sounds awful, but also
I've
really
even
cool.
heard that before. That's so weird.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like everyone is a little different. I think a lot of people will come in and say, well, I don't know what my clair is. And I'm like, you've got like 11 different senses. You have your primary senses, you've got your clair, like it's all a big mishmash. Don't think you just have to have one. But I think a lot of people, we all know like the crawling out of your skin feeling.
Oh yeah.
Oh God, that feeling when you're like everything in you is telling you to like run, but you're like, I'm here for this. That's always a fun one. So those are some of how things work for me. And I feel like I've heard everything under the sun. I don't know. That's just, yeah, that's what I got.
I experienced a lot of the clairs myself, so I mean, I think it's more so like for the common person that doesn't necessarily think that they have that communication or whatever.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think a lot of people are I think most people have had the experience of, because I will ask this of people, like kind of your average person out there, like, have you ever heard the voice? Like, the voice that like comes in and it's like, get the heck out of here, or oh my God, you should go do this thing. I think a lot of people get that kind of really powerful clairaudience sometimes. So I think that sometimes is something that I see. I think the goosebumps, like the creepy crawly on the flesh, is something a lot of people are familiar with. I think most people are pretty empathic if they are allow themselves to be. And so that's an aspect of clairsentience, like feeling what others are feeling what has like soaked into a space. What's that classic example of like walking into a room where somebody's just had a fight and you feel like uncomfortable? So I would probably say most people that I have met have had clairaudience, and then different kinds of clairsentience, whether it's emotional feelings or like creepy crawly, like skin crawling, goosebump feeling. I also wonder too if a lot of us are seeing like apparitions more frequently, but we think that they're people. I wonder that all the time.
It's I find it really interesting because like it's like I'm one of those, and this has been this way for many years now, but it's like I can't always discern when there's a good spirit around. Like I can't walk into a house and be like, oh, this is good energy or a good spirit. But as soon as I'm near or somewhere close to the vicinity of something dark, whether it's a dark spirit or dark energy, it's like everything shifts. I get that this heavy headache right in my third eye. I get this tingling, this almost instinct that's like, you step into the room and instinct says, oh, no, no, we're going back. this is too heavy, and it's weird because like I've tried to focus in on that good energy. Not that I can't feel good energy per se, but most times it's like, can I discern the difference? It's like, oh, I know when it's dark. I know when there's something dark. I drive by a house and look at it like there's something there, and it's not a happy spirit. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. And I don't know if that's like, if it's something that I can kind of change, or if that's part of like my story, like when it comes all the way back to opening that original door.
Yeah.
Like constantly coming back and meeting these people who kind of experience those same things, those dark things. It's like, maybe that's just my track. That's my path.
I mean, you went through a really intense experience. And so that does seem like you would be really poised to recognize danger like, I mean, because it's like a form, and this is like some of my old victim advocate speak coming in, but like that hypervigilance, that a lot of people who've experienced a trauma, and I think that's something that people sometimes forget, is that even though I'm a pretty lighthearted person, which I'm proud of, I'm like, you don't fall into 20 years of being a victim advocate without a story that gets you there,
Sure.
and so even though I come into this stuff with a lot of joy in my heart, I'm not a dummy. Like, and I know a lot of people who have had wildly traumatic experiences with spirits. And I think that's something that also has to be like acknowledged. But my suggestion for people, and this is something that I will tell, because I have a lot of people who've had really bad experiences and then they come in trying to find that joy. Going to places that have like really lighthearted haunts can sometimes be fun. Like I know it's expensive, but I can't say enough good things about the Stanley Hotel out in Estes Park, Colorado, where, Stephen King famously wrote or came up with the idea of the Shining, but it's so much more. I mean, it's like that place is so special, and it really, I don't know. I just can't even tell you what's going on there. There are so many, it just delivers. Like, it's almost like a place that's like, it's showtime, and it will deliver what you're looking for. And it's loud too, where you're not just like, oh, maybe this is just me thinking that I'm having an experience. It's like, oh no, this is so I don't know. Sometimes going to places that have like fun haunts, I feel like those are harder to find though, because not everybody wants like a fun haunt. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. So I feel that a lot of people wonder this, is there a responsible or ethical line that people just should not cross when it comes to spirit communication?
I guess everybody would have a different thought. I think for me personally, and this is kind of where I get into, I have real mixed feelings about some true crime type stuff out there. I do think folks should examine like when they're going to like, connect with a murdered person. I just think that there's like a responsibility to think about like, just to like maybe put yourself in the ghost shoes, and just think about, what's your outcome, and also like, how could you maybe offer some kindness to those spirits? I think you see that a lot with like Southern plantations, where I'm like, really? Like, are we really not going to like talk about like what this really was here? Because that's a huge part of like those hauntings, right? And so I do just think maybe like, I don't know, historical context and like sensitivity is sometimes like a thing that should be considered. I don't know if it's a bright line of you should or shouldn't do it. You asked the wrong person this question, because I will play devil's advocate with you. And so we are completely out of time, because I'm like, I wouldn't do this, but then sometimes I would, I mean, it's a tricky thing. I do think that you do need to just think about the consequences of your actions, and also just like think about, like, again, just like thinking of like a lot of homicides, like there's a lot of like hauntings that are linked to homicides. There's a lot of like violence against women and kids that is linked to, hauntings. And, I think it's also just kind of think about not just those spirits, but also like if you're someone that you're an investigator and you're like, putting out videos of your investigations out there, maybe also just think of like, does this person still have living descendants that maybe still kind of like following their names, and like have like a little Google alert on their names, and maybe just think about it that way, So there's that. I'm hesitant to say this for you, Eric, because I'm like, oh man, you learned the hard way. Be thoughtful. Like I meet a lot of like little like newer witches who are like, I want to work with the infernals. And I'm like, okay, let's think about this. So it's like, you can do whatever you want, but who are you going to call if things get out of hand,
Right.
Ghostbusters. I mean, sorry.
I know. It's like, I don't think the Ghostbusters would know what the heck to do with that. But, so I think too, it's also just like, if you're going to mess around, make sure that you know what to do if you find out,
100%.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's important also to like just being a person, like if you're going to talk to another person, whether living or deceased, consider your own triggers. Like, what are some of the things that you've been through that if someone were to ask you a very similar question, how would you respond? How would you react to that? Because like if it would make you angry or it'd make you upset in some way, maybe you shouldn't ask that question, you know? But of course, it's all comes down to one's discernment. And I'll be honest, there are some people out there that are just either they don't care or they're honestly just idiots and they do things without
Yeah.
thinking. And
Yeah, just and some folks just don't kind of, it's they're wanting to go in to be like provocative or something like
yeah.
that. I will say like a question that I always get really good reactions to. Number one, asking for song recommendations. Like, what was your favorite music, or can I play you a song? That's something that we'll sometimes do. The Stanley Hotel, that was so fun. We got more like there is a spirit in the lodge library at the Stanley Hotel that loves Carly Simon, You're So Vain, and also there were these and Three Little Birds by Bob Marley. It was real cute. Dream a Little Dream of Me was one that just kept coming up, and Everywhere by Fleetwood Mac was one that kept coming up at the Oliver Hotel in Bisbee. But another question I love to ask too is, what advice would you have? If you're a spirit that is like keeping tabs on what we're all doing here, what advice would you have based on what you lived through or have seen, and what maybe you are perceiving us go through? And that's always really interesting too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what's one thing that you hope that everybody takes away from the book or even this conversation today?
Oh my gosh. So I think that one of the things that I find remarkably stupid in kind of like spiritual circles is all the silos that everybody is in. Like the paranormal people, like I get nervous every time, like anytime a paranormal show wants to talk to me, because I've had some terrible experiences with investigators that will treat me like I'm stupid because I identify first and foremost as a seer and a spiritist, aka a psychic medium, right? And so, but I also see like the witches think that don't like the paranormal investigators or don't think there's value there, and the mediumship, like there's like the mediumship silo and the paranormal investigation silo and the witchcraft silo, and then the like the cryptid people and the ufologists. And I just think it's so dumb, and we miss out on so many opportunities to like learn. Because what if we're just all looking at different pieces of one gigantic puzzle,
Yeah.
For sure.
So that's a big part. That's a big theme throughout Little Book of Spirit Communication, as is track down source text, look at history, and look at context. And everybody should practice psychic development. Those are like the 5 things there.
Well, I think like overall those 5 things, especially the beginning there, really works well with our show, because that's what we came in here with ParaTruth Reborn to do. That we have so many different people from various different walks of life, regardless of their belief systems, their religions, etc. It's like we all come here, we talk, we share, we build this little community, and I think it's important to best know yourself. It's important to know others and what they go through and what they believe, right? Because you can't work with people if you don't know what they're like. Like you can't, I've had there was a time where I had a very, I guess, negative view on the quote unquote Satanist. All right.
Oh.
But there are certain things that some of them believe, that they think about and they consider that's like, that's interesting, and it's like it helps build a different foundation, I think, for us in our own belief system, even if we don't agree with them. And I think that's important. And not to call them out, Satanists specifically, but in this case, we've had some interesting stories with Satanists in the past.
who called themselves Satanists, we'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, y'all have really interesting backstories too, and so I love that there's so much variety in like what you bring to the table, and that definitely I appreciated hearing. I appreciated hearing that, but yeah, everybody just be curious and be open-minded and learn as much as you can and practice as much as you can. And because I don't know, I just figure like, what do we have to lose? Just
Right.
have fun.
For sure.
100%. Well, we're going to go ahead and let you go here for now. So just stay on the line with us while we close out the show. But just thank you again so much for joining us. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was lovely to chat with you.
Well, and real quick, where can everybody find you?
Oh, that old thing.
That's important.
So my website is sterlingmoontarot.com. And just go to sterlingmoontarot.com and you'll find all my social media links and everything is housed there.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Well, now that we're here at the end of the show, I think we're running really out of time here. So, as I said at the beginning, this has been a live show on 107.7 FM New Orleans and 105.3 FM the Gulf Coast, and of course, the United Public Radio Network. So, until next week, where you'll find us, same time, same channel. My name is Eric.
And I'm Justin.
Peace.